Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Once again, I hope you can hear me properly. I'm very happy that you gathered here in order to have an update about what's going on in Sudan. I really appreciate your presence, and I would like to applaud Islamic Forum for having availed this platform for us to come and give you an insight on what happens in Sudan. In South Africa, people are ignorant of what happens in Africa in general. They may know what happens in Europe, the United States, and the First World, but hardly know what happens in Africa. I think even inside South Africa, many South Africans don't know how many provinces are there, if you ask them. And once upon a time, I was entering the airport, and the lady saw my passport and she said, SDN? I said, what do you understand? He said, Sweden? I said, yes, Sweden. She said, okay. Yeah. So it shows, despite that social media has made things very easy, and you can just click and then you can know what's happening. Despite that, still people are ignorant of what's going on in Sudan. The unfortunate part also is that there is a lot of confusion going on. Some elements who are against Sudan, or those who are buying into the narrative of the anti-Sudan forces, they also have their own narrative, which is actually, it is very hard to swallow. And this is what I have come to realize. I was interviewed by so many media outlets in South Africa, including SABC, Radio Islam, Hilal TV, Salam Media, and so many radio stations. And one of the things which journalists phoned me later and confirmed is that the narrative that you are giving to us is something new. And the lady from the SABC said, no, from now on, we'll take you on. We won't let you go. We have to listen to you, because what you said makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense as to what happens on the ground. There is a lot that can be said as far as Sudan is concerned, but for the sake of time, I will be speaking the next 20 or 30 minutes, and then the picture will be clearer thanks to your interactions, inquiries, and interventions. And please, let us make this event interactive as possible. And there is no taboo question. You can ask whatever question that you want to ask. But I'll give you a general map, an overall map of what happens in Sudan. The major events that shook the world over the last 1 week or 2 weeks is the event of Al-Fashir. And you know Al-Fashir, the major city in Darfur, and this is the capital of Darfur. It was overtaken by the Rapid Support Forces, that is RSF, militia. And when they took over the city, it was not just a matter of taking over the city, but they did things that no mind could ever imagine. The horrors, the atrocities they committed against civilians, it is something no human mind can ever imagine. We may have heard that in Africa there has been some kind of revolutions, rebellion, militias, or whatsoever. And whenever we hear that there is something that happened in Sudan of similar nature, we might imagine that it is the same. No, it is not. It's absolutely not. So in a nutshell, what happens in Sudan is a kind of war of aggression war of invasion in which many countries are involved, with one major country as financier, which is the United Arab Emirates. And all of you know, of course, on whose behalf the United Arab Emirates is operating either in Africa or in the Arab world. So I'm not going into that details, but to give you an idea is that what happens in Al-Fashir is something extremely horrible. What happened is the rebels took over the city, the army withdrew from the city, and then the militia, they announced to the citizens that, oh, now whoever wants to leave the city can leave. And they opened a corridor. Now people rushed in thousands to only found out that they were trapped. It was a trap. 2,000 people killed overnight. And the rest fled to northern Sudan in a journey that would take about 1,800 kilometers. Just imagine, about more than 1,000 kilometers. Children, women, elderly, it's something disastrous. It's absolutely disastrous. Now, you may ask the question, from where did this thing start? Who these RSF are? And how they evolved over time to become such a great force that even threatens to overthrow the national army. In early 1985, that was the time of the first revolution that took place and overthrew the government of General Numeiri. The late Sadiq al-Mahdi was elected as Prime Minister, and until that time the South Sudanese rebellion was still on, because it erupted in 1983. So when the General Numeiri regime was overthrown and an elected government took over, that rebellion was still continuing. So now Sadiq al-Mahdi formed a militia. That militia is called Marahil. So that Marahil was formed of the Arab Bedouins because they were known to be fighters. Unlike those who claim their ancestry to Africa, we call it the blacks or African or whatsoever. Although in Sudan it is very difficult to distinguish who is Arab and who is non-Arab. But these people just trace their ancestry to Arabia, and they don't have the language of their own. So a militia was formed of them, and this militia was used in fighting South Sudan. That was Marahil. When General al-Bashir took over in his military coup and continued for 30 years of his rule, in 2004, there was a rebellion in Darfur. A group of people felt that there is injustices from the central government, and they demanded rights. When the government didn't listen to them, they took arms. Now, their movement was very fast. It's not like the movement of the army. So the government of Bashir decided to form a group of paramilitary group to fight the rebels. But the mistake was that this paramilitary group, when they were formed, instead of going and fighting the rebels, they ended up fighting the normal people, the villagers, and these were the people of the land. These people inherited the land from their ancestors, while the Arab nomads, they didn't stick to a certain land. They moved behind their herds, and some of them got hosted and settled. So these are the major tribes like Rizegat, and you might have heard the names. So what happened is, instead of them going to attack the rebels, they ended up attacking civilians, And that's why we ended up with so many camps around Al-Fashir, Zamzam camps that you might have heard about. These are the people whose land was taken, and they were first to live in camps. What happened is that the government recontrolled them and directed them to still fight the rebels. But through the course of time, the parliament in Khartoum decided to organize, to regulate these forces in order to assist the army. So they issued a legislation which turned them into a border guard. So they are guarding the borders, and they were given official name as border guards. That was in 2013. In 2017, the National Parliament passed a law annexing this group, this National Guard, this border guard, into the army under the name of Rapid Support Forces. So that's the time when they took that name, Rapid Support Forces. And they were very well controlled, they were well disciplined, and they assisted the army. The personnel was about 20,000 personnel, and they were equipped with normal traditional weapons. Until this moment, that paramilitary group was performing some kind of national goals, preserving security, especially in volatile places where the army's movement actually is slow. So they would move very swiftly, and they could attend. Although there was a controversy about the main purpose behind this group. Why should they were formed in the first place and from a certain ethnic group and so on. That was a debate was happening, but still they did very good job. Now, how things turned. When the government of al-Bashir was facing demonstrations, this paramilitary group was supposed or was expected to defend al-Bashir's regime, but they didn't. So at the end of the day, al-Bashir's regime fell. And there was kind of political vacuum in the country because the new political forces didn't have enough political experience to fill the gap that was left by the government regime. So what happened is the paramilitary group moved immediately and they filled this gap. Now they started dictating on the military commander to remove certain officers, military officers, who would not obey the leader of the RSA, because the leader hasn't been to the military college. And he was given, I think he was marshal, something like that, general, he was a general. So he was having this kind of military, and they refused to salute him. So whoever refused to salute him, he issued instructions that they must be dismissed from the army. So in a nutshell, Hemeti became the ruler. Despite Al-Burhan, who is now the military commander, was the chairman of the council, that is Sovereignty Council, and Hemeti was his deputy. But the deputy was very powerful. Within 2.5 or 3 years from the time of al-Bashir's regime, when it fell, within this period of time, the RSF was adopted. Adopted by who? By regional forces that thought it is high time for them to entrench their foot on the Sudanese soil. That was the United Arab Emirates. And then they started funding RSF, arming RSF, and doing everything. Now RSF has grown into a state within the state. It has its own funding sources, A lot of companies overseas and inside trading in gold, and you know that UAE is hungry for gold, as you know. So this Hemeti, the leader of RSF, became so rich. A normal soldier in the RSF would receive a salary that may be double the salary of a military officer. Just to tell you how much this guy grew. So what happened is that there were certain steps whereby the UAE wants the RSF to take over the country because it was moving very fast. Recruitment pace was very fast, and the armament pace was very fast. So they wanted to sign something called a framework agreement. Now that framework agreement would give RSF 10 years to integrate into the army, because the demand of the revolution, the December revolution, was that RSF should be integrated into the army, and that the army must go back to these barracks so that the civilians could rule smoothly. That was the slogans of the revolution. Now, given the pace whereby the RSF was moving, it wanted no less than 2 years just to swallow the army, not the vice versa. It would swallow the army. So the army refused to sign the framework agreement. Now, the tension escalated, and there was disagreement between the army and the RSF. Now, the next step was to have a military coup. A military coup that would remove the generals and then establish a new rule presided by the leader of the RSF. But that coup failed because the army stood its ground, and Al-Burhan got 35 of his bodyguards got killed because his house was attacked, and these soldiers were defending him, and he narrowly escaped death. He escaped death. It is from here where the war started. It was a military coup, and it failed, and then it turned into an all-out war. The war was also assumed that it would be just for a few days, and then the army will be defeated, and everything will come to. But that was not the case. It went on, and until this day, we have almost 3 years, because it's now about 2 years and 7 months, something like that. It's coming to close to 3 years, and the war is still going on. All Khartoum and the middle of Sudan was under control of the RSF. Almost 80% of Sudan was under the control of the RSF. What happened is the army announced mobilization, and Sudanese youth joined the ranks of the arms, that is what we call the popular resistance, and they joined the army, and they fought. Some of them got killed, but they fought very fiercely, and they managed to chase out RSF from Khartoum, from the center, and towards the periphery of the west. That is Darfur. So at the moment while I'm talking to you now, the whole Darfur, after the fall of Al-Fashir, now is under control of the RSF, except there is one town which is called Babanuza, and it is like an island now, which is besieged, but is still resisting. 2 days ago, there was a very massive attack on that town, but the soldiers repelled the attack, and so many of the attackers got killed. Until this moment, the resistance is very strong in that small, tiny town which is called Babanusa. So all Darfur now is under the RSF, and parts of Kurdistan state, got two major states. So this is the map in general. There are certain questions that you may be interested to ask. And before you ask, let me ask you, or ask them and then give answers, so that at least I'll give you a chance to interact. One is the RSF. RSF does not know anything called the rules of engagement. In any war, there is rules of engagement, and Sudan is no exception. Sudan has witnessed rebellions from the time of inception, from the time of independence, that is 1956. From that time, Sudan witnessed rebellions. All these rebellions is completely different from the rebellion of the RSF. That's why whenever they said RSF is a rebellion, I said, no, this is too soft. It's like you are commending them by calling them the rebellion. They're not. They are terrorist group in the strict sense of the term. And if they are not terrorists, then we need to redefine the word terrorism. It has no meaning at all. Because, why I'm saying this, when these people took over Khartoum, they caused massive destruction. They destroyed everything. I was reading in the newspapers, they did 700 factories were burned, destroyed. So somebody who has a goal can in no way cause such destruction. Not only destruction of infrastructure, but destruction of human beings. I can't even tell how many women got raped, how many homes got looted, how many elderly people, children got killed. Killing for them is just like a hobby. And they don't kill the army, the soldiers, people who are holding guns against them. If they did that, that is nature. You are killing someone who wants to kill you. But you don't have any reason to kill somebody who hardly walk, an elderly person you just kill. Like how we have seen in Al-Fashir, that Saudi hospital, about 600 people got killed. Among them doctors, nurses, the sick, anybody who was inside the hospital got killed. And when I'm saying this, it is not this what I heard from somebody else, no. This is something they do it by themselves, and they photo it, they took it, they shoot it by themselves. It is not something that is AI generated or something. No. It is they themselves who take videos of themselves doing these atrocities. And that's why the world has seen it. And you have heard all this around, all over the world, including South Africa. So RSF does not commit to any rules of engagement, like how it happened in the previous wars. I personally grew up in an area where the rebels were moving around, and everybody was doing their own things. Nobody actually bothers. People going to their farms, to their shops, and the rebels, and they are moving, being chased by government from here, and they run here, and they attack government garrisons or the military garrisons, but they don't attack civilians. Because every rebellion has a goal. And sometimes when you listen to when they tell you or they speak about their goals, sometimes you sympathize with them. You may not agree with them 100%, but at least you sympathize with them. And you feel that government must listen to them, except the RSF, because RSF has been used as a functional group. What do I mean by functional? Functional group means there is somebody else is using them to achieve their goals. And it looks like the component of the RSF, as I said, some of them are Arab Bedouins from Western Sudan, but at the moment while I talk to you now, Bedouins from Niger, from Chad, from Mali, and all this, the belt, the Sudan belt, these are nomads. They didn't have a land. And it looks like they are looking for a land. So their quest for land converged with the objectives of the regional powers who are hungry for resources. Now that convergence is what made them an ideal functional group. That's why when they come, they attack the houses, they make sure they terrorize everybody there. If they don't kill you, they still terrorize you so that you won't return. When you go out, they bring another family and they put in your house. This is exactly what they did now in Al-Fashir. And this is what they did in Khartoum. So whenever they chase people away, they bring new ones and they settle them there. So it is a settlement kind of occupation. The atrocities they commit are only the atrocities committed by settler nations. And when I'm saying settler nations, you got in the world, we have 5 countries in the world that are called settler countries. That is United States, Canada, Israel, South Africa, apartheid South Africa, and Australia. And the indigenous people were wiped off so that it can be replaced. So that mentality of a settler is in the RSF, and they are nicknamed Janjaweed. So when they kill very terribly, and that's why we see all these kind of things. So they don't abide by any kind of rule of engagement, not at all, and they don't have tangible objectives that you can listen to them and say, okay, it is reasonable, something reasonable. Why government cannot listen to them? They don't have that because they are functional group. They are used by a functional state for imperialist goals. This is exactly what's going on. So wherever you see in Africa something going on, rest assured that there is imperialist fingerprints there. And what's happening in Sudan is in no way exception from that. And there is something I always say, and I tell when I meet African journalists and decision makers, I tell them what happens in Sudan won't be only in Sudan. If, may Allah forbid, and it shouldn't happen, if they controlled Sudan, they won't stop there. Because functional groups can be used in any country, even in South Africa here. This Burama group can be revived and funded so that tomorrow they can cause chaos because their goals are converging with the goals of imperialists. And that's why I say the AU, South Africa, and all influential African countries must have a strong stand against the RSF. And any attempts that the RSF must be something of the future. They can in no way have any kind of future in Sudanese politics or in the Sudanese army. And this is what the regional powers are trying to do. They are telling that please go and sit with them, talk to them, negotiate with them, to do what? To bring them to power. The Sudanese people cannot believe that they can be able to see these RSF elements ruling over them after the atrocities they had committed. That's why I'm telling you, it is not like any other rebellion that Sudan has witnessed. It's something completely different. So, the phenomenon of the RSF can be replicated in any African country if African organizations cannot deal with it seriously and making sure that it is ended. And I would like to bring to your attention that Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia is now in United States, and he held talks with Trump, and he passed the message. He told Trump something, And Trump declared that I didn't know it was like this. It's funny, of course, that a country like the United States doesn't understand what's going on in Sudan, given that you cannot equate their involvement, but still they say, oh, Trump said, oh, it is like that. The prince told me that I thought there was no government. The prince told me there is a government and there is an army also, so let's do something about it. It's very funny, of course, very funny, but it looks like that wrong message is circulated everywhere. I don't blame Trump, because Trump is not part of the system that rules the world. Maybe he is honest. Yeah, he's honest, because the information that he received was the deception that was circulating is possible. But the fact of the matter is that the imperialist involvement in what's happening in Sudan, there is no question about it. So there is a talk at the moment about peace in Sudan, and the African Union with IGAD, they are trying also to come in. But if they come in with the mentality of two warring factions, they won't be successful, because the Sudanese people won't accept any solution that can bring RSF into government system. What happens is, there, according to Jeddah agreement, there should be some, the RSF must group its soldiers in certain areas, and it must come out of the cities so that they can negotiate the possibility of DDR, meaning that they can be either, some of them can be assimilated into the army, or some of them can be just released and they can go. But in any way, they cannot be assimilated into the ruling system. So this is, in a nutshell, what I wanted to bring to your attention, and I will be very keen to listen to you, and from your interaction, definitely the picture becomes clearer. جزاكم الله خير. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Ramadaan, for that sobering overview. We'll open it, it's a small group, we'll open it to the floor. Anybody has any questions? You can go to the roving mic over here. Anybody? Okay, so I've got one. You mentioned MBS in America, but now Egypt obviously does not want RSF, right? Egypt is more inclined towards stability with the government. Same with Ethiopia, same with Qatar, same with Turkey. So who is backing the government in Khartoum is a question. It's interesting because Egypt stands on the same side. I mean, they're complicated because you've got Gaza on the one end and Sudan on the other end. And they seem to be supporting the Zionist government, but in this particular case, they're probably not on the same page as Israel. Similarly with Qatar and Turkey, and Ethiopia obviously would much rather have a reliable Sudanese government than the rebels. So that's a question over here. And who's supporting Khartoum financially? Eventually, if they don't get their way, RSF would run out of funding, and maybe there'd be a war of attrition. And the third thing is, what is Israel's
second question?
But the funding. So related to the geopolitics of who's supporting who, but the funding for Khartoum. And if RSF stops getting funding, you've got these militias from outside of Sudan fighting. And then another question I have is, I mean, this is in certain senses Bashir's Frankenstein. He created this, the Janjaweed. They committed crimes back then in 2005, 2006, 2007, and now they've turned on Khartoum. So it's, and then one more question is, what is Israel's interest? So obviously the UAE are very greedy for gold, we know that, and it's what is Israel's interest? So, shukran. Should we take from here?
Jazakallah khair, brother, for asking these questions. What is the role of Egypt, Turkey, Ethiopia, and who is standing with Sudan? I can say that Egypt was a bit hesitant in the beginning to get involved fully in what's going on in Sudan. It's a bit hesitant, but it looks like the RSF itself, sometimes, when they say a stupid person ends up losing his own allies and supporters because of the way they behave. And this is exactly what RSF did. RSF threatened Egypt directly. And it looks like Egyptian circles have taken the threats very seriously recently, not some times back. And that's why Egypt is backing the military, Sudanese military, very strongly at the moment when I'm talking to you now, because they have realized the magnitude of threat that RSF poses to Egypt from the south. Saudi Arabia also has thrown its weight behind the Sudanese government because of the atrocities that RSF has committed recently in Al-Fashir, and the whole world actually made a lot of noise about it. And it looks like siding with RSF has caused a lot of burden on its sponsors. Only the UAE cannot make a U-turn, because a U-turn for UAE is a bit very expensive, very costly to make a U-turn, unless it is pressurized by the major circles in the world, the United States and Europe. So at the moment, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and all these countries are backing Sudan. With regard to the neighboring countries, there is some kind of shaky position, because Hemeti, the RSF leader, has invested a lot in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, a lot of investments. And that was the reason why Kenya was regarded as a hub for the RSF activities, until Sudan government reacted very strongly, which is why Kenya has at least pressed some kind of brakes and not to allow RSF to express itself too much. So that is mainly the position of the neighboring countries. But still, weapons are being smuggled or transported through South Sudan, through Central Africa, through Chad, and through Libya, of course, Libya of Haftar. Many weapons are smuggled through Libya, and even the late attack on Al-Fashir was helped by Haftar. And even it was said that there was airstrikes from Libya against Al-Fashir. So this is the general picture about the neighboring countries and how they react to Sudan. With regard to Israel, Israel definitely is keen to make sure that the whole area, Egypt, part of Sudan, and part of Saudi Arabia and Iraq, this is called the Grand Israel, something like that, the Great Israel. Yeah, the Great Israel, this is something that is announced. It's not a secret. Even the Israeli Prime Minister announced some times back, and it caused some kind of rage in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt. But of course, you know how powerful these people are. So definitely they are backing RSF. There's no question about that. And you know, of course, the functional states, they collaborate and work together. This is the nature of politics, unfortunately. Yeah. I hope this answered the questions. Any further intervention? Yes, brother.
Okay.
Come forward, please, so I can hear you.
besides the army, is there any popular counter-revolution that's happening against RSF?
Counter-revolution?
Besides the army, the
People.
In Sudan, are they mobilizing themselves to be a counter-revolutionary force against the RSF?
Yes, definitely. There is a very strong movement at the moment, the popular resistance. This is the popular resistance. And many Sudanese youth have joined this popular resistance. And also, if you remember, during the transitional government, a peace agreement was signed with the Darfurian rebel movements, who later joined the government, and they are part of the government. Their troops were supposed to be integrated into the army, but when the war started, they joined. So they are fighting alongside the army with their soldiers, and they are fighting very fiercely. So we have these revolutionary forces, that is the armed groups who were previously rebels. Number two, you have the popular resistance, which is composed of the Sudanese youth, and also there is a new militia that was formed by the government alongside the army. So there are so many groups that are fighting along the army. So there is a counter-revolution. In fact, majority of the Sudanese people are backing the army, because the army is the only entity that remained intact, because the whole state is collapsed. There are no ministries, there are no factories, there are no markets, everything was taken over by RSF. And the RSF caused a lot of destruction. So Sudan is going to be rebuilt from the beginning. The only entity was remained intact is the Sudanese army. And that's why the Sudanese people had to back up the army, or otherwise, if the army is gone, then definitely there's no Sudan anymore. There won't be any Sudan. That is just in a nutshell. There won't be anything called Sudan if the army is destroyed. Yes. Yes, brother.
I have two questions. Why, number one, why we don't see like strong support from Turkey and Qatar to Sudan army, like what we saw in Tarablis when Haftar tried to attack Tarablis. So we noticed that time that Turkey supported like the fighters in Tarablis very heavily, and they protect. I don't know what the meaning of Tarablis means. Tripoli. They prevented Haftar to enter Tripoli and kick him back to Benghazi. That's the basic question. Why Sudan? I feel that Sudan army almost like fighting alone without like enough support. Honestly, that's my intention. This is the first question. The second question, I think Sudanian community in South Africa have a very important role to play here in this country. I heard from some friends that some Zionists, especially black Zionists, they talk in this language. They saying, look at Sudan, Arabs and Muslims killing our brothers black in Sudan. So they talk about this concept. I am not so sure what kind of things happening. I haven't heard anything, but I think I heard someone telling me about it. So I don't know if you are aware about these stories.
Yes. Thank you very much, Doctor, for asking these very good questions. With regard to Turkey, I think there is a lot of collaboration at the moment between Sudan government and Turkey, and it is not something that is done in secret. I think there is a lot. And Turkey provided the army, Sudanese army, with equipment, but I think recently the level of support is being escalated. This is according to my reading. Yeah, so there is a lot of collaboration in this regard, because Turkey has recently felt that if the RSF is to take over the country, this will not only jeopardize Sudan's national security, but also the entire region. Not only the Horn of Africa, because most of these countries in the region are volatile, and a small thing can burst into something big. So that's why RSF has to be contained and to be sorted out, if I can speak the language of South Africans. So that's why Turkey is it needs to be, is heavily involved. As regards to the Sudanese community and the narrative that Arabs are killing or Muslims or whatsoever, yes, there is that kind of narrative. And the word Arab in the context of Sudan is completely different from how it is expressed outside Sudan, like in the context of South Africa. And this is one of the funniest things that John Garang, the leader of the SPLA, whenever he used to come to South Africa here, he would meet the ANC and tell them that, look, the Arabs have occupied our land and chased our people and so on. So, because talking to a South African person with that background, so they visualize the Arabs, people coming from Saudi Arabia, and the indigenous people like the blacks of South Africa and so on. So that's the image that comes to the mind. But that is not the case in Sudan. In Sudan, you hardly tell who is Arab and who is not Arab by the look of the skin. This is impossible. Because the Nubians in the north, some of them even look like the same color of yours, but still they are not Arabs. And in Western Sudan, you got indigenous people who trace their ancestry to Africa, but they are fair color. While others who call themselves Arabs, still they got very dark skin. So it is very, very difficult to tell in terms of, to tell the ethnicity of someone by a look of color. The word Arab in Sudan, when it is said, it means Bedouin. Yeah, if somebody said an Arab means it's a Bedouin. Bedouin coming from Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, this is an area in Sudan, or Bedouin people. But people who live in cities, they cannot be called Arabs. They can call whatsoever, but Sudanese or whatsoever, but they cannot be called Arab. So the word Arab, if you are said you are an Arab, means that you are Bedouin, or you behave like an Arab, means that you behave like a Bedouin. So that's what it means in the context of Sudan. And I think this is one of the important messages that need to be told in South Africa. So I didn't finish the story of John Garang. So John Garang used to tell the ANC leaders that the Arabs did like this, the Arabs. Now, when Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Minister of Foreign Affairs, when she visited Sudan, and she was looking for the Arabs, she could see everyone just like her, looking for Arabs. They said, no, these people who are called Arabs, these are the same people whom you are bluffed that these are Arabs. You know, when she returned back, they removed the red carpet. So John Garang, whenever he comes, there is no red carpet anymore. So they said, you bluffed us. So that is the situation. So there is no Arabs, and I think this is the message that people need to understand. That in Sudan, in fact, the level of integration, or racial integration in Sudan, there is nothing like into it in Africa. Because if you go to countries like Ethiopia, for example, in every province, you find an ethnic group which represent a state within the state. They have their own language, maybe religion, they have their own culture, even the features are different. That is not the case with Sudan. In Sudan, you cannot find an area which is inhabited by a pure ethnic group. There is a lot of integration, always integration. So whenever you hear the word, even the Arabs themselves, the people who are calling them the Rizegad in Darfur, these are something historic. But recently, or at the time being, most of them are living in Khartoum, in Port Sudan, in Kasala, in places where you hardly tell which ethnicity you are. In fact, some people don't even know where they belong to, who their ancestry, because of that intermarriage. Yeah. Any other question, please? Yes.
Sure. Has the OIC got involved?
Sorry?
Has the OIC, Organization of Islamic thing, has it got involved? 57 member states, Sudan is there, UAE is there. Has it been raised at the OIC level? What's happening in Sudan right now?
It is unfortunate that Islamic bodies, Islamic and Arab bodies, don't have any existence in the geopolitics of the region because of the conflict, of the conflicts between the Arabs themselves, the conflicts between the Muslims themselves. Because of that, and you have seen what happens in Gaza. There was hardly any Islamic or an Arab body, the organization of Arab League. The Arab League was completely paralyzed. And the same thing with OIC. So these institutions, even if they hold a conference, they just condemn and they condemn with the strongest words possible, and that's it. Yeah.
Sheikh, what's...
Yes, sorry. Sorry. Sister?
What caused the collapse of Umar al-Bashir?
What?
What caused the collapse of the government of Umar al-Bashir?
What caused the collapse of the regime of Umar al-Bashir? It's a very difficult question, my sister. Yeah, it's
So that cause was a vacuum.
it is very difficult. It's, mostly something internal and external. So there are external factors and there are internal factors as well. You know, the regime of al-Bashir has been always looked at as apocrypha. You know, apocrypha in the region, in the biblical term, that's something that is undesirable. And so from that perspective, it was there was embargo on Sudan for a long time. Sudan has been isolated from the international monetary system until this moment. You can't have a visa card in Sudan. So financially, the government has been besieged, and it has always been on loggerheads with the international centers of power in the world. That is an internal and an external factor. But an internal factor is also there's some kind of conflicts within the ruling system, which led actually to some kind of corruption or some kind of mismanagement and so on. So all these combined together led to the conviction that the government was wrong. So even the elements of the national party, that is National Congress Party, the NCP, which is the ruling party, even the elements, the leaders of that party reached conclusion that the government should go and a new government must be formed to represent the will of the people. So, so there are some elements, external elements and internal elements combined together, and then the government had to leave. But the unfortunate part is that the transitional period was not well managed. Yeah, and this is one of the loopholes that led to this chaos we're experiencing and seeing now. It was not well managed because, like how you got in South Africa, for example, you almost drifted into civil war. Had not the wisdom of your leader saved the country. When there was war between the ANC and the Inkatha Freedom Party, many villages were attacked and there was almost civil war. And then Mandela had to intervene in order to save the country. That was not the case in Sudan because we didn't have that kind of leadership in the transitional period. And that's why things went wrong. Yes, Brother Ahmed?
Now, presently, like things like schools, You know, the Islamic University was there where where people from all over Africa used to come and study there. All these institutions, like I know that the headquarters of Brothers Dawa has been fully destroyed, all those things. But what kind of life people are living today in these circumstances?
What kind of life?
Life, food availability, water, electricity.
Yes, at the moment, yes, as I said in the beginning, destruction was very massive, massive destruction. And the university you're talking about, you don't know how much destroyed it is now. It's absolutely destroyed. The headquarters of Munazama, because Munazama, when you realize how much Munazama was targeted, you understand exactly who's behind these people. Caused a lot of destruction, but at the moment, water and electricity are being reconnected again, and people who are living in Khartoum are slowly coming, life is coming to normal. It's not fully normal, of course, it can't be normal when complete destruction happened like how it did. But life is slowly coming to normal. Many areas now are covered with electricity and water. These are the essential elements for life. And then there is relative security compared with the places that were during the time of the RSF control. So life is far better now. Khartoum is recovering, but it requires time, of course. It needs time to fully recover. Yes. Yes.
Why the interest, sorry for ignorance, why the interest now of the UAE in the goal that Sudan always had? When General Bashir was in control, what was the UAE's interest? Did they have any interest then? What was the relationship between that government of General Bashir and UAE?
Yeah, the whole thing has to do with hunger for resources. And you know, Sudan is a very rich country. It is the richest in Africa after DRC. The most rare minerals are found in Sudan. Sudan is rich in oil, and the longest river in Africa is in Sudan. That's the River Nile. Let alone the underground water, the rainwater. 2,000 square miles, square kilometers. 70 or 80% of it is Arab land, which means that it is, so there is a lot of hunger for resources by the superpowers these days, and there is an attempt not to allow locals to use their own resources for their own benefit. And this is the imperialist mentality, as I said. The imperialist mentality is completely different from the mentalities of the rising nations, like for example, China, Turkey, Russia, and all these rising nations. When they come to you, they invest, and the profit is 50-50. You benefit and we benefit. This is the concept. But now imperialists, they don't believe in that. Imperialists want you to be the guard of your own resources so that they come and make use of it. So people are lurking in poverty while they can come and loot the resources, like how we have seen in Niger. When this military coup took place in Niger, they discovered that uranium, Niger's uranium, is bought by the French at the rate of 80 cents euro, 80 cents, while the international price for uranium is 200 euros. From 200 euros, you get it. So 80% of the rural Niger is living in dark, while 80% of France is lit up with Niger's uranium. Look at these paradoxes. So this is the imperialist mentality. The imperialist mentality will allow this 50-50 benefit, but you give there and they are looking it after it for us. That's it. That's the unfortunate part. United Arab Emirates could have come through the door, and the door was open. And until this moment, the Sudanese people are amazed, are shocked, are living in shock. Why? What did we do to UAE to do this? You know that in 1997, in the beginning of the 1970s, Shaykh Rahmatullah alayhi came to the president of Sudan, by that time was General Numeri, and he said to him, I want Dubai to be like Khartoum of that time. And he asked President Numeri to give him administrators. You know, all the municipalities in UAE were run by Sudanese experts. The judges, the system, the whole system of the United Arab Emirates was established by the Sudanese experts in every field. Given that these people were not paid by UAE, they were paid by their government to go and establish another. So when the Sudanese people reflect on this, they get a shock. Why should, what wrong did we do to deserve all this kind of destruction from UAE? Until this moment, nobody actually knows why the UAE does this, except you can say that this is that kind of mentality. Any other intervention? I think, Brother Muhammad, are we still on time?
Can I ask one last question?
Yes, brother.
Okay. You mentioned Kosan and Zuma coming and realizing some of the dynamics of there. What has been the role of South Africa to date, and what do you think South African government should be doing going forward? You know, within the African Union, you've got Zionist countries like Morocco, like Rwanda, very Zionist, very pro-Western. South Africa has tried. I mean, in DR Congo, we were fighting with the Rwandans, right? Through proxy, unfortunately, and our army was too weak. But I mean, Ramaphosa has a good. You've got Zain Dango. You've got a very committed ANC, but they're quite weak right now. And you're fighting countries much bigger than yourselves.
Okay, that's a very good question. The role of South Africa and AU. I think the AU and South Africa have been confused with regard to what happens in Sudan. It is possible that the events that took place in Al-Fashir might have changed the views of the people, because there was some kind of wrong narrative circulating in the AU circles and South Africa as well. In Uganda, you got Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. These people sent wrong message, and you know, AU headquarters is in Addis Ababa. So there was a wrong message. The wrong message, or the wrong narrative that was circulating, is that in Sudan there is a military coup. Al-Burhan is a coup government, so a coup against a civilian, and now the military was the one who established the RSF, and now the RSF is against the military, so meaning that there was a fight between generals. That was a narrative which was circulating, and that narrative was bombarded. It was shoved down the throats of many Africans to get laughed that this is the truth. Until some of them maybe visited Sudan, or some of them saw the horrors committed by the RSF to come and realize, okay, why should these people behave like this, and what is their goal? You cannot fight democracy, because this is one of the narratives also, that RSF is fighting to spread democracy. You can never spread democracy without abiding by the rules of engagement. Now, what would you do if you took over the rule? You can't. So anyway, there was some kind of confusion, which is why the African Union could not intervene positively or constructively and effectively in the case of Sudan. But I assume that with the ongoing condemnations in the international circles against the RSF, because at the moment there is an attempt in the US Senate to designate RSF as a terrorist group, and also European Union, and all the international bodies are trying to designate RSF as a terrorist group. Should that happen, then it will send a clear message that whoever supports RSF supports terrorism. And I think it's only if that happens, then AU and South Africa will have an effective engagement with Sudan. There is a role or something that South Africa and AU can do at the moment while we are talking now. And the thing that they can do can immediately affect what's going on the ground. To tell the UAE that please hold your support, or otherwise your investments in Africa will be jeopardized. Now that message, if it is made clear like that to the UAE, definitely UAE is not prepared to lose its investments in Africa, because what happens in Sudan, as I said, can be replicated in any African countries, including South Africa. So if that message is sent clear to UAE, then UAE can, the moment the UAE holds its support for the RSF, then the army will take over control of the country and the problem is gone. That's it. So it is because of that confusion. Right. Exactly. So once again, yes. Any other inquiry or intervention? Okay. Jazakumullah khair. I really appreciate your presence. The fact that you are sitting here until almost 9 o'clock now. It is 9 o'clock, in fact. I appreciate your presence, and please pass the message that Sudan is going through the hardest time in its history, and that the Sudanese people have been wronged by their own neighbors, by their own people who are operating as functional group, unfortunately. And what happens in Sudan is a war of aggression, is an invasion, a war of invasion, and it is supported by foreign forces. So please get the narrative right, and things inshallah will pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save and protect Sudan. Jazakumullah khair. Shukran jazeelan.
Jazakallah khair to Shaykh Ramadaan for enlightening us on the situation in the Sudan. It is a complex situation, but alhamdulillah, you've given us good insight and of the situation and the dynamics of the politics there as well. Can we ask you to close with a dua?
وبارك على محمد وعلى آله كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا فإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الظالمين. ربنا من الخاسرين. ربنا اغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا وما أسررنا وما أنت أعلم به منا يا رب العالمين. اللهم إنك أنت الله الذي لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك، لك الملك ولك الحمد وأنت على كل شيء قدير. نستغفرك ونستوب إليك ونتوكل عليك ونعوذ بك من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولوالد والدينا ولكل من أنعمت علينا والمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظ السودان وأهل السودان من كل شر يا رب العالمين. اللهم احفظ السودان وأهل السودان من كل شر يا رب العالمين. بفضل سبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Please help yourself.